If you don't think you could draw like Peter Han or Kim Jung-gi, then you need to hear this. Drawing from imagination isn't magic. It's a puzzle, like a Rubik's Cube. And like a Rubik's Cube, there's a specific formula you can use to solve the problem. This formula will help you go from a blank sheet of paper to a fully fledged illustration. And I know this because I spent the last 2 years watching every demo I could find, and more importantly, drawing from imagination all the time. In that time, I've learned how to consistently create illustrations in perspective straight with a pen. And it's easier than you might think. So in this video, I'm going to share the 5-step framework I use to take a drawing from blank page to fully fledged illustration. You'll learn how to draw in perspective without a grid, how to orient your characters so they all look like they're in the same space, and how to navigate the drawing from imagination puzzle. But before you can do that, you need to know what drawing from imagination isn't, because the name's a little bit misleading. Drawing from imagination isn't seeing what you want to draw in your head and then putting it down. It's also not having a photographic memory and drawing what you remembered. It is, however, following the rules of the game. That game is to start with a single line and fill the page, and there's only one rule: follow perspective. Because perspective is the only thing that separates a drawing from imagination like this from a drawing from imagination like this. You're only impressed by drawings when they have believable space, and that's done with perspective. So the true talent behind artists like Tom Fox, Kim Jung-gi, and Peter Han isn't their brilliant imagination or their fantastic memory. It is their ability to find perspective within their drawing. And by the end of this video, you'll know how to do that as well. It all starts with step 1, which is to cause a problem. Puzzles don't begin in order. You don't start the Rubik's Cube with all the colors matched. No, the Rubik's Cube begins when you mix up all the colors. You give yourself a problematic place to start, and the game is to find order in that chaos. Similarly, your drawing from imagination begins when you put a line down and introduce a set of problems. Now, you can screenshot this, but this will be available on my Discord channel, which you can join in the link in the description. Throughout this video, I'm going to show you pre-drawn examples, but also we're going to draw from imagination, and I'll walk you through the 5-step thought process. So starting a line, honestly, it doesn't matter where you start the line. So what I usually start with is a set of eyes. Now that's personal preference, but Kim Jung-gi does this as well. You start with the eyebrows because the eyebrows orient your perspective. So if I started with eyebrows like this, you might not see the significance of this, but a lot of problems have already been introduced. For example, we have limited our perspective now, because when you see eyebrows in this angle, what this means is that the plane of the face follows a downward angle, indicated by the direction of the eyebrows. What this means is that we know our perspective goes down this way. Now, that's step 1. We've introduced the problem. Now, there are other problems as well. The problem is, what is this character? There's eyebrows. We're not just going to leave eyebrows in the air. So now we have to finish this character. So we can add eyes to the character following that same line of perspective. But before we can do that, we have some choices to make. As we mentioned, perspective is the most important factor within a drawing from imagination. It defines the believability of your image. It sells the scale. Everything roots back to, did you establish perspective well? So before we can start adding detail to the character, we need to be very aware of how it will affect the perspective. And as an example, let me show you these 2 drawings. Now, they are of the same person, but what I want you to notice is the convergence between the 2 lines here. If you converge, so we've drawn 1 line so far. Now, where we orient the second line on our character here determines whether the perspective is very mild or very distorted. And that's because perspective points exist at the convergence of 2 lines. So depending on how soon these lines converge, depending on the angle, it determines the perspective point, right? We have a point. Now, what we know about perspective points is that they lie on the horizon line. So 2 lines converging determines the perspective point, and the perspective point determines the horizon line. Therefore, it only takes 2 lines to find the horizon line. This is really significant and very important to remember, because once you've put 1 line down, you're halfway to determining the entire horizon line and therefore the entire perspective grid. So your next line matters a lot. Sorry to interrupt the video, but I want to let you guys know about our sponsor, Craftsy. Craftsy is an online learning platform where you can learn anything from drawing, painting, to sewing and baking. And it is the home to Paul Heston's cheapest courses available. Now, if you're watching this video about drawing from imagination, then you need to learn perspective first. And Paul Heston is a perspective master. His class on how to draw your point of view was life-changing for me, and I'm sure it will be for you as well. The best part is that you can get this course for only $1.49 with a Craftsy premium membership, which will be available for the first 1,000 people to click the link in my description. Thank you to Craftsy for sponsoring this video, and now let's figure out how to draw perspective without the grid. To demonstrate this, let me show you 3 lines we've put down. Let's say these are all the eyebrows we just drew. Eyebrow, eyebrow, and eyebrow. Let me show you how much of a difference the angle of the next thing we're gonna draw dictates. So if we went parallel, and let's say we drew a mouth in the same direction, like this. What that means is that the angle of our next line is almost parallel. Therefore, the convergence of these lines is going to be far away, right? Let's say it's going to be this far. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means our horizon line, therefore, is down here. And the degree of the change in degrees of our character is much more mild. Then, for example, if we drew our mouth here, let's say we drew a mouth like this. And let me just put in eyes so that we can visualize what this is. Put in some eyes like this. If we put our mouth here, now what this means is that the line of the perspective is here. And you see where they converge? Here. Therefore, the horizon line is here. And therefore, we have a much more distorted perspective. Let's just see how this plays out in the long run. So I'm going to add my character's head. And because the horizon line is down here, what this means is this is where this line determines what we're looking up to and what we're looking down to. So everything going above the horizon line, we're seeing the bottom of. So what this means is I'm seeing the bottom of the chin, right? I'm seeing the bottom of the pecs. So I'm not, we're below this character. And therefore, everything follows suit like this. And at the line is exactly where the camera is relative to this character. So if I was to draw out this character, you see right at this line is the camera's height. So the camera in this scene is, well, let's say it's right above the character's belly button. And at this horizon line is where objects of the same height meet each other. So you see we have the pit of the elbow here. Therefore, the pit of the elbow must be here as well. Like this. And now, everything going down below the horizon line also starts curving downward. And now this is everything we're looking down at. So that would mean if this character was wearing pants, which, let's keep it PG, the line of the pants would be going up because this is essentially an ellipse that we're looking at like this, right? And up here is an ellipse that we're looking at like this, following perspective. Now, this is from the 25 drawing exercises video. Check that out because that's especially relevant, but this is talking about the decision-making process and finding perspective intuitively. So point is, I think you can see that as this character comes out, we would be, let's say this line comes out, the knees would follow the line here, the legs would follow like this, etc. You can see. Now this is pretty realistic perspective, not distorted. Now let's see what happens here. Because we converged these two lines, what happens is that everything else relatively gets distorted as well. So this line being straight indicates that this is now the horizon line, meaning our camera is now at the nose level of the character rather than the chest level. And how that affects our character is that, well, we're no longer seeing the bottom of the chin, right? And it's actually quite distorted. We're no longer seeing the bottom of the pecs. We're actually above the character now. So it's going to be something like this. And now everything's following. So you see this straight line? This line determines the angle at which objects of the same height cross one another, or go back in space. So I'm using this line. This is why the horizon line, this is why your first two lines are so important. So step one is to put any line down. And step two is to decide how closely converged do you want your lines. So that's why step two is find the line. In the first step, you caused a problem. You put something down. And then the second step is to find your line, right? The immediate priority is to find your horizon line, as this will solve most of your problems going forward. In order to do this, create another line of the subject, right? We created another line, the mouth, and the angle of this line determines the point of convergence. And we know that the point of convergence, the vanishing point, VP, indicates the horizon line. And the horizon line is super important because it determines the sense of perspective for the rest of your image. Now, from here, we have a character. Now, what's step three? Well, with our horizon line established, what we can do, what it's given us is the ability to flesh out more of the scene, knowing where the camera is. So you see we have this camera height. Well, let's see step three. Decide the story. Once you have determined / chosen the horizon line, your next priority is to flesh out the subject you're drawing. Here you must figure out what is happening to elicit your character's expression, position, etc. So, drawing from imagination isn't just a perspective problem. Of course, you can practice perspective by just doing the cube grid, and I'm sure if you're watching this, you've done your share of cube grids, and you might be wondering, well, why can't I still draw from imagination? Keep watching, and this should help. But we're not just doing practice here, we're telling a story. So, it's our responsibility now, having created a believable scene, is to now go, well, what's the point of the story? And this is where the storytelling and creative side of drawing from imagination begins, is, well, let's say we have a character looking at us. Why are they looking at us like this? Okay, so we got a jacked dude in sweats standing and giving a sort of challenging face. Let's see what this character's about. And now it's like we have to flesh out the story world with the perspective established. So let's say I'm giving this character, let's say I'm going to give this character a bat, right? And now notice with the horizon line established, it's much easier to flesh out any other objects because we know the perspective. And now don't draw these lines. Of course, you're welcome to if you, it absolutely helps. But the goal is to eventually see this line in your head, see these grids in your head. So let's see, and we can actually find more of the perspective. Objects rotated from the perspective grid, by the way. So if you want to draw a rotated object, they all fall on the horizon line. They just rotate along the horizon line. So, for example, how can we flesh out this story? Well, I could give more context to this character. So this character's got a bat. Why don't we show that he's been beating up another character? So we're going to show a character here with bruises and bumps and a real sad face because, well, he just got owned. So, and now remember, the box, this is where the other videos about boxes and cube grids comes into play, because knowing the horizon line now is just a matter of reverse engineering what we know about horizon lines and going, okay, well, if there must be a box that goes somewhere to this vanishing point. So your box must be fit within the perspective we've established. So let's say this is our perspective grid for the character, and now all we're doing is fitting this character within this grid. Let's have this character's hair be tousled. And let's have them their hand is going to be going down on the ground like this. And let's say like this. And they're laying around the character to give the character a little bit of context in this space, right? Now, this overlaps a little bit with step 4, to set the scale. Once you've established your character's space, you want to add more characters into the background to establish the context. And setting the scale here is taking our subject and placing them, or an object of similar height, within the scene. And the easiest way to do this is to follow this rule of thumb. Objects that cross this horizon line always cross at the same point. So this character, no matter where they are along this horizon line, their nose will always touch this horizon line if they are standing upright or at the same height as this. What that means is we can start with the nose, and depending on the size of the nose, we know how close or how far the character is. So it doesn't matter where the character is oriented, as long as we start with their nose on the right spot and we follow the ratios of their character independent of the entire scene. We just follow the ratios. It will inevitably look as though the character fits within the scene. And if you get this wrong, this is an example of getting it wrong. This is a scene with characters in a bathhouse, and we have this character in the background. Notice what happens when we push him below the horizon line. Notice how now, while every character's ankles crosses the horizon line, this character's calves cross the horizon line. And now they no longer look far away, they look tiny. So establishing believable scale is only about having objects of the same height cross the horizon line in the same place. To show you a more clear example of this, notice here how I've established a sense of depth here without the need for perspective grid, only because all the noses of the characters are around the same height. So therefore my horizon line is right about here. And we can I don't even need to show detail with the characters in the background. As long as you put characters in the same relationship across the horizon line, it will read. And what this means is I can take this character and move them in the foreground. And let's say I want to show this character staring at us. What I do is I look at you see their nose patch, this thing, crosses right at the horizon line. Okay, so if I made a nose patch and just started drawing a character based on what I know about characters in relation, like I've drawn the nose patch, now I'm not thinking about the perspective. I'm thinking about, based on a nose patch this big, how would my character have to look? And I'm purely thinking about this nose patch and drawing a face sort of outside of perspective. The fact that I've anchored this nose in the right place should mean that the character will feel as though they exist in the scene without my needing to force it, right? So let's draw the head of this, and now I'm looking at the character just to see if we can get them looking like they're the same character. Kind of failing that part, but so we got something, and they got a little. Now, the true correct way to do perspective is to make sure that every section lines up. But once you have one object in the right place, you measure everything else about your character purely based on the ratios of the anchoring object. So I don't need to think, is this hair the same size here? No, I just need to measure the entire character against one object and then measure the object across different characters in the scene, if that makes sense. So we have this character here. Let's say they're turning a little bit sideways. And let's just fill out their neck, see what they'd be. So, according to our rules, the simple rule of perspective that we're following, it does look like this character is coming closer to the camera. Now, if we wanted to have this character, let's say this character is over here and far in the background. Well, we just have them, same thing. Look at the nose patch, draw the nose patch. I mean, frankly, far away, the character would be pretty hard to see, so then I'm just going to draw the proportions that I know that a character has based on their head size to their torso size. So you see, it's not about, this is what I'm talking about. It's not about visualizing your entire scene. You're more discovering one step at a time. You're going through the fog and placing one good step forward. I don't know what this scene is going to turn out to. I just know that I can take a nose and fit it into a head, and then I fit the head into a body, and then I can draw another character by having them cross the same point in the horizon line. And then by that point you have two characters, and then you have three characters with the same. You just expand one step at a time without thinking about the whole thing. I think Bryce Collender has a term for this called discovered perspective. He talks about exactly this. You don't have an image in your head that you're bringing to life. No, you're starting with a line, that's the game, and you're figuring out the options available to you. Now, the really cool thing about drawing from imagination that makes it infinitely fun is that the only thing that separates Kim Jung-gi from my level or your level is he just chose different lines than you or I did. He has the same amount of mechanical ability, arguably much more, but point is, just like we can write the letter R, he can write the letter R. We're not different mechanically, but when I choose to go straight and turn around, he chooses to go straight and turn left before turning around. This is just a metaphor for the fact that he consistently operates with better decisions, better line choices, and therefore draws better than us. But that's the only thing. So there's sort of a infinite tree of options happening whenever you draw from imagination. And the more lines that you put down, the more limited your path becomes. So when you're drawing from imagination and you're unsure of how to continue, the best thing to do is not draw there and start where you know where to continue. Let's see how this works. So we have this tree here. And let's say we have a ton of options. Let's say we have all these options before us. These are all the possibilities that this drawing could take from this point on. And what I mean by that is when you have just eyebrows, there are so many variations. I could have gone like this. I could have gone like this. Shoot, I could have even gone like this. Now that's probably the worst choice of all, and this is what I mean. Kim Jung-gi would have gone like this, and that's why he's better than me. But at this point, we've drawn one line. We are now at the beginning of separation. So let's see where this goes. What am I going to go with? I'm going to go with what's familiar to me, and I'm going to put a line down wherever feels intuitive, because at this stage, we don't have enough information to start getting out of our comfort zone. You kind of start with what you know, because this is establishing the rules of the game. Remember, we're setting up chaos here in order to bring about order, and that's the game of drawing from imagination. So at this point, I've already established perspective. It's already done. How do I know that? Because our nostrils are parallel to each other. Therefore, if they are parallel in a downward direction, that means the vanishing point's also in a downward direction. Now I'm going to draw this line out and then see where it converges with the previous line we drew. Now it's actually pretty far away. And what does this mean for us? Well, it means A, that our camera isn't that distorted, and B, that our horizon line is down here. So knowing this, and I'm going to try to be minimal with this. You know what this looks like. There's a line here. What this means is at this level, objects are level with the camera. So let's keep drawing. So maybe I'll have our character smoking a cigarette. At this stage, obviously we have to mention that there are tons of form manipulation and drawing skills you need, but they're separate from the skill of finding perspective and existing in the confusion that is drawing from imagination. Because the skill to understand and deconstruct forms is one that a lot of artists use even when they don't draw from imagination. But the skill of deciphering perspective is one specifically for people who are trying to draw in a non-traditional, very much like trying to create for imagination's sake way. So this is a skill that you should practice separate to the 25 form exercises. So the first two steps were done within the first two lines, and that was, once again, to find the horizon line. And with this done, we have now given us the room to experiment. Now, obviously, this takes a lot of practice to get used to the horizon line, but the simple fact is that every single line of this character just goes in a sort of fan-like direction. I call perspective a fan because it's one of these, you see this sort of, it'd be like an oriental fan, right? And it just goes to the vanishing point. Now this object, this character will be oriented this way. And now what you're doing is just working off of the reference libraries you've gained and working off of the things you've remembered and studied from. But the simple pattern is that, well, if I want to draw a character's shirt sleeve here, if I want to know where the equivalent shirt sleeve would be, it would be here. But once we've got past the two steps, which is to create a problem and then find the line, now we have to find our story. Now, your story is already determined the second you put your eyes in the frame, because these eyes are looking at something, and this is the prompt for where your story could go. So it depends how much you want to have fun and experiment. But let's say I'm going to let's try to have some fun with this, right? So I don't know what I'm drawing, but I know that it's something weird. So I think I'm drawing a dragon, I guess. And the dragon, remember, it has to, and now, see, I just messed up. Well, I did something I didn't mean to do. What you'd notice is that the nostrils of this character follow up like this, whereas the nostrils of this character go down. What this means is this dragon has their head tilted upward. Therefore, they are not on the same horizon line. Now, what this means is the dragon's head isn't straight. The dragon's tilted. So I have to now follow the rules. Now, if the eyes went downward, this would ruin the entire illusion. I need the nose has established the direction of my dragon's eyes as well. So the eyebrow would follow like this. So it's really just about recognizing the patterns of perspective and then following them. And 80% of this is done by just understanding what the horizon line entails. So let's draw our dragon here. Now, do dragons have ears? I don't know. Now, when we're drawing the draw, of course, it will follow the same rules. And this is where we talk about the cube grid, because if you can notice, the head of our dragon follows the rules of a cube like this, right? And this character follows its own rules of another cube. And that's just where everything we draw is oriented in these primitive boxes, right? And now maybe I want the dragon to come into the foreground. So what I could do is establish the depth. Maybe this dragon's coming around, and I have to think about what would an object look like from this angle. And what it would look like if you've done the parallel ellipses exercise is it would be at this angle, right? We're drawing the wireframe, right? And now I'm excited to announce that you can join the mailing list for the 25 drawing exercises book, and I think you should, because it has, I mean, the evidence is there. This stuff works. These 25 exercises have helped me just in making the book. I've seen huge improvements with my drawing. They really are the best way I've found to learn how to draw from your imagination. So the waiting list is available. Those on the waiting list will get a big discount when the book comes out, and the book will have full videos for every single exercise and something like 80 pages of straight information and homework. So if that sounds interesting, check the link below. The book's not going to come out for a little bit, but if you want to know when it will, then be my guest. So at this point in the 5 steps, we are somewhere between deciding the story, setting the scale, and completing the quest. And I haven't talked about what they are yet. Let's look into what the steps forward are once you've decided the story. At this stage, it looks like I'm deciding that my character is just hanging out casually with a dragon, and the dragon looks pretty concerned. So what do we do next? Once you have determined your horizon line, flesh out the subject you're drawing. Here you must figure out what is happening to elicit your character's response, expressions, positions. I'd say we've done that. We've decided the story. Set the scale. Once the story of your character is established, your next focus is to build more context by adding supportive elements in space. Follow the relative height established by the horizon lines to orient your character. Okay, so what this is saying is put something else in the space to orient your location a little bit better. That makes a lot of sense. We're doing that with the dragon, but we could be pushing this a little bit more by, let's say we add another character. So we know the horizon line's down here for the character. What if we drew another character looking at the dragon? This would give some more context to the space. So what if, and this would also give more context to the story. Why is there a dragon talking to a character? We could add buildings for context as well, but let's see. I don't know. So this character has a shirt, that much we know. What if this character was kind of like, I'm imagining that show like Danny Dragon or whatever it was. I'm thinking Danny Phantom. Like American Dragon or some, whatever that show was. I'm thinking like this. We got this like chill skater kid who's like a little reckless, and he stumbles upon a dragon, and the dragon's like, oh, maybe the dragon is, the dragon looks scared, so maybe the dragon needs help or something. And maybe 2 friends stumble upon it. So I'm going to draw this character, and maybe this character is more chill. So this character's got a beanie. And now similarly, we're getting this character to look at this dragon. So I'm going to have this character. And once we've established the eyes, we know, just like we can do this box thing for every single thing. We've established the eyes. Now the eyes are going slightly down. What does this mean? Well, therefore, if the eyes are going down and the eyes represent the face plane is going slightly down. Therefore, we're seeing slightly like the top of the head. So the character's looking slightly down. Now this beanie is throwing it off because the beanie is tilted back on the head, right? It's not like the beanie sits back in the head. So I drew this character kind of like, what? I don't think he believes that this dragon's real. So, and truth be told, I kind of forgot. Every time I draw a face, I forget that I have to make an expression. So I gave him sort of a lame stare. And that's part of the problem solving is you go, well, like I didn't give this character much expression. So I guess he's sort of this, and that determined his character too. The fact that he was sort of nonchalant about seeing a dragon made me think, well, he might be like a skater kid who's like, I don't care, man. And maybe he's just like, what would a skater kid have? And now, you see, I've limited myself. I put this line down, and what this means is, let's say before I put this line down, I had multiple options in front of me. I had 3 choices. Choice 1 was arm up, like this, and arm up dictates that the arm comes up from the shirt. Maybe I had arm straight out, right? And then I had arm down. And I, without thinking about it, I chose option 3, arm down, and that means nothing else in this skill tree. I've gone down this path. So that's why this game is infinitely playable, because every time you draw, every single line you pick is a decision to be found. I had no idea I'd be drawing a dragon. I literally drew this, and then it turned into a dragon. So let's put the teeth into the dragon. And again, the teeth just follow the direction. And now the tongue just follows the direction. Everything sort of slots in. And I know that this is much harder than it looks, but I promise you, if you do this regularly for 2 years, you will see much more improvement than you could imagine. I know this because I saw it myself, and you just continue to work through the problem space, and you continue to force your brain to fill in the blanks, and it will do so eventually. Now, if you don't know what you want to draw every day, think about your daily life and think about, what was an interesting moment in my day? And force your will onto paper, as Rembert Montal says. So let's keep going with this. Now, as the scales get closer, they're crossing where the camera is, so the ellipses are changing directions, like this. So you want to make sure to establish that both with scale, but also with the direction, right? So these scales are going to be much bigger, right, than the scales over here. Now these should be much, much smaller. And maybe at the bottom of the scales, we don't draw them all, we just suggest like it's almost like a brick-like pattern. Now if you just put lines, it's really important to not draw more than you're sure of, because every line you put down is something you cannot erase, you cannot change. So you see, I put this hand down, and now this character has to have their arm down. Whatever they do with their hand, it must be from an arm down position. And these limits you have to be intentional in making, otherwise you could inadvertently end up with a drawing you don't want. I mean, every single line you're teetering, you're risking diverting from what you want. And Kim Jung-gi said it himself. He's like, he makes tons of mistakes. People just don't notice it because he knew what he meant to draw. That's the only person who knows what they meant to draw is the artist, right? Which is also why drawing from imagination feels really hard on the individual, because you know how many times you messed up, but the people watching don't. People don't know. They just see the end product. So now we're adding some things. Now I'm kind of stalling here. So when things get a little bit confusing, I do end up stalling. Let's get through this. Let's add the shadow down there. Now, here's where we could have more story opportunity. What if I had the dragon pointing out here for something to show maybe what it's concerned about? So to figure that out, I'd have to figure out how does the arm of a dragon fit their anatomy. And I'm just sort of winging it here. They don't have wings, I was going to say. Pun intended, but... So let's add claw. And I'm just thinking about the foreshortening here. So maybe it'd be something like this. And then like this. Something like that, right? But the dragon's pointing out, and now this arm's going to be, we can add a shadow, just showing that the arms, I guess, like out, not, it's blocked by this form. And no, we fumbled that a little bit, but the dragon's pointing out, that gives some more context to the story, right? And this guy, the dragon's saying like, yo, my sister's out here and she needs help. And then this guy's like, I've heard that before. So maybe we push this guy's pose. Remember, the horizon line is down here, so we're not seeing the top of his shoulders, we're seeing the bottom of it. So all these things we're seeing, we're sort of looking from below the character, so we're not seeing the top of him. And you draw the character in front first so that you can fill in the character in the back. If I draw the character in the back first, I limit where my character's this foreground character's hands can go. So maybe this character is just waiting by holding their skateboard like this, and they're just like, this guy interrupted them at the skate park. So the character's skateboard also in perspective. Everything has to be in perspective, and maybe the character, yeah, I guess their hands could be here. This. Now their wheels, remember the wheels go straight to the horizon line, so following the same angles as the horizon line. Like this. So the character is hanging out with the skateboard, it's blocking. Now we gotta imagine through this character. If this character had a shirt, it'd be going down like this. Let's do some X-ray vision. I'll show you guys the X-ray vision. So this character has a shirt probably right around the horizon line. And we would have the character's legs come down like this. And then so down here, we would just show probably some legs and some pant folds. And now we can give it some shading if we want. Sorry, by the way, that the camera cut out. I don't know how long it did that. So now we're getting pretty far into the drawing, and we're at step 5 at this point, which is to, with all major story and perspective problems largely solved, the final step is to fill out the page with more content, with more context. Textures, values, or details may all apply. So at this stage is really just about fleshing out what you've got. We've already figured out most of the answers to most of the questions. Now, if I was a little bit more diligent and a little bit more skilled, I would be texturing these with a lot nicer shapes and a lot more convincing, like dragon scales. I don't know how to do that. I haven't studied dragons. And now this is the, again, after you do this drawing for imagination, you go and you study subject matter that interests you. But this is the, and you see I'm adding detail on the top of their, you can add details that separates one plane from another. For example, if I added details around this jaw mass, it would make it look more curved, right? If I added more details right around the side of the eye, it would make it look like it's a separate plane. Same thing with the side of the head, right? You add details where you want to separate objects from one another. Now this character, let's finish up this character. This character is not buying that this dragon's real for some reason. Now, just because I'm sharing this method, obviously doesn't mean that I can draw drawings from imagination like Kim Jung-gi, but in watching hundreds of hours of demos from him and Peter Han, it is the same process throughout. I'm following the process that they laid out, although this is not the words that they've necessarily said. That being said, you be the judge of whether this is useful information or not. This is the process that helped me. And once again, if you want this sheet, my Discord is new and it's open, and you can download any of the relevant material from this video for yourself and just take a look. So I'd say the last things we want to add, aside from just these textures, is location, because location goes a long way. So how can we do so? Well, let's imagine, where might we be? We might be at a skate park. Let's add a light post. So I think we could add a lamp post behind these characters. And I'm thinking, we got to think about the scale of this. Like this is the height of crotch height, essentially. And we made a mistake. You see, the mistake we made was that this character, we made a mistake. See the line of the horizon? It crosses this character's height, crotch, but it crosses these characters' thighs. So now we have a problem. Now we have a consolidation problem. Whose height is real? Because this character can't be thigh height and shorter than this character. If it was thigh height, this character would be up here. So the good thing is you probably didn't notice that, because with enough believable perspective, little mistakes kind of disappear. But just want you to know that this is an actual mistake. And what this actually means is that our horizon line must be up here, because you don't, the line you drew takes priority. It's sort of a line of best fit, like a regression curve, or I don't do math. That sounded right. I don't know. Now the horizon line is determined by the average of the discrepancy between these two, and it's a bit higher up, which doesn't, all things considered, affect us too much. So yeah, let's add a light post. So when we're adding a light post, we have to follow the rules, right? So all of it must go back to this vanishing point. This line of the light post has to lead all the way back down somewhere on the horizon line. And then the second line of it has to lead there as well. So something like this. So it's very much above their heads. Something like that. Now, if we want to add another light post in the back, we can do so. We just have to follow the perspective. And this is, again, setting more scale. So if we drew this line out, we could establish a horizon, a light post back here. As long as we follow the same rules. And now they would cross the horizon line at the same place. And they also follow that horizon line. So what else could we show that is the height of belly buttons, or let's just say it's around, I'd say it's around hip height. Okay, that's where we're trying to go for. Well, we could show characters in the background, and as long as we put their hips or pants in the across that horizon line, we can show them like as supporting elements. What if we showed like, what? We show people freaked out by the fact that there's a dragon here. Right, and we can show multiple kids. And we can even bring them closer up, like here. As again, just remembering that where I have to have them in the relative to the horizon line. Right, so now I think I really messed up here, because I actually should have gone up instead of going down. So here's the groin height. But remember, groin height was low, so we were supposed to go up a little bit. But that's okay, right? We live and we learn. Now I could really push this if let's bring another character. Let's see if we can play with scale here a little bit. Let's draw a character really up close, like and let's, Bro can draw, but apparently can't draw girls, so let's try a girl. I think I already messed up. But let's do... Whoa, Bro cannot draw at all. And maybe this character is like really up in this character's face, right? So and let's see what we get from this. Now again, I think this character is leaning over a little bit, so we might see the top of their shoulders, but it's only because they're leaning over. And we have to be aware of that. Let's say they're in a hoodie. And so I have this idea of the character maybe is pointing at something that this other character took from them. So maybe, and now the anatomy is kind of weird here, so we're going to see how we can deal with that. But So it looks like the character stole this person's apple. In order to consolidate the weirdness of the character's arm, we have to figure out what we can do. So something we might have to do is adjust the point of this character's shoulders and put their hand here. Something like that. Yeah, there we go. If we put the hand here, notice how now the character sort of looks like they're turning their head a lot, and it's still a stretch, but it's a little bit better than if their arms all the way back there. So let's say we have this character just, I don't know why they're bullying this dragon, but it looks as though in the story this character is now, yeah, bullying the dragon. So, but you can see how it sort of looks, and now the character is like, he took my apple, he took my apple. And this guy's like, wait, what am I supposed to do about that? I don't understand. And now anything we're gonna add, right? It could be, bro listens to Nirvana, so it all follows in perspective. This is just step 5, adding it, fleshing out detail. Let's say we're at a school building would be going to the horizon line, as with everything else. So anything else in your scene goes to the horizon line. That means it gets more steep as it goes up as well. Right, so if there's a building here, it shouldn't be a straight line. Sorry, it should be going downward, because it would also be going to another. This is just 2-point perspective. Like this. Oh, here. And now we got to keep in mind scaling, but now we're just fleshing out parts of the scene, right? Adding whatever we fancy. And let's add a nice sky as a framing element. Let's see, where should we add the sky? Let's add it here. So now it's nighttime and the 5 stages of the drawing have been completed. We've caused a problem, found the line, decided the story, set the scale, and completed the quest. And we've gone from blank page to full illustration from imagination. I hope that helped you guys. If you want some actual live classes with me, then Drawing Club has begun and you are always welcome to enroll. But I'll keep making these videos and I hope that was helpful. Let me know on the Discord community if you found it helpful and what else you want to see me make. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you to Craftsy for the sponsorship. I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. Oh, and join the newsletter if you want exclusive deals on the upcoming book. See you guys.